Story 1, work for juvenile and domestic relations court, and although this would probably fall under Division of Child Support Enforcement, their workload is already outstanding for how much they make and the hours they have to work. This would never work out well. Story 2, as a child of divorced parents, I think it's not a good idea. When my parents got divorced, my dad was a successful attorney, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom with a little work experience in retail. My dad didn't want custody of my sister and me, and my mom really couldn't support us. She was able to use child support money to get herself a degree and start a career that benefited us greatly in the long run, as it set my mom up with a decent career. My dad and his second wife were always angry when they saw we had shoes that were getting old or jeans that were getting a little short, and my sister and I would hear about how he was giving my mom all this money for nothing. As soon as we turned 18, he quit paying anything and didn't offer to help with college at all. If he had been able to use the legal system to compel my mom to spend child support in a specific way, I might never have gone to college, and my mom might still be working a register at department stores with no hope of retirement and probably on some kind of welfare. As it is, she was able to help us with school, and she'll be retiring next year because she's been a medical technologist working in a lab at a local hospital for the last 25 years. Story 3, because it would suddenly turn that everything but bare necessities is an unaffordable luxury. My friend's father threw a tantrum when he saw that he got new shoes because secondhand is enough. Not that he himself bought his wardrobe there. Refused to pay for any vacations, like the Boy Scouts camp, or repair his bike. Story 4, in my opinion, no. I pay my daughter's father and trust he does what is best. If their family is struggling with expenses, so is my daughter because she is part of that family too. That's just how I see it. Now, if they went and got into a bunch of financial trouble that was just completely unnecessary, and he couldn't bounce back, maybe that would be grounds to get full custody through the courts. If he couldn't balance the budget appropriately, it would no longer be in her interest to keep her in that household. Story 5. The court system does not have time to babysit everyone who receives child support. I also dislike the idea that under this model, there is a presumption that child support money is misspent. There should only be monitoring after a showing of misconduct. Story 6. It's one of those things that sounds good in theory but will be too costly and impractical to do. Edit for clarification. For the people arguing with me, yes, I already know there's no real way for it to work. I simply mean that it sounds good on the surface, but once you start trying to figure out how to do it, the whole idea falls apart. Story 7. I would be for it. However, the reason why no law exists is because it would be insanely difficult and expensive to enforce. Think about it. An ex bought the brand name cereal instead of the no-name brand? You see that on her grocery bill and think, no way, not on my watch. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. You're laughing. Haha. No way anyone would be so petty. Nope. Enforcing accountability in child support expenses just opens up the worst legal can of worms imaginable. As for why I'd like to see it, I don't have any visibility into how my money gets spent, and it irks me. Furthermore, my ex frequently calls and asks for the next support payment early. Yes, often there are valid reasons. Someone needed shoes, fees for school trips, etc. But I also know she spends way above her means on a lot of fun, entertainment-based discretionary things. Then she realizes, whoops, can't buy groceries. Teehee, please. So she gets to be the fun parent. Well, kids, looks like we're going for long walks in the park again this weekend. Hooray for the library. Okay, 600 replies. Child support is contentious on Reddit. So far, the themes are, yes, it's 2017. We should have the technology to implement this. Maybe some magic debit card or electronic benefits transfer style. No, current child support departments are bunged up enough. This would kill them. Stop giving in to your ex. If she asks for money early in the future, just ask what she needs specifically and buy it for her. Then take that off the subsequent payment. Good idea. People are petty. So put a law like this in motion. But to prevent abuse, the cost for an audit is borne by the parent who asked for it or variations on that. I like that idea. Artichoke sculpture. Okay, we got a child in here. Story 8. I grew up with a single mom who struggled to get by. She had 3 part-time jobs at one point, and money was always an issue. The child support had to go to whatever was needed at the time, sometimes for things like clothes for me, but other times on things people might think were frivolous. Perhaps the car needed to be fixed or something not directly related to supporting a child. Having to document what you spend the money on would be demeaning to people who are already in a difficult situation. It sounds like something you'd hear about in countries we'd rather not compare ourselves to. Story 9. It would be pointless in almost all cases. Money is interchangeable, so all one would have to do is provide receipts for food, clothing, bills, etc., which almost everyone has. Plus, do we not have enough bureaucracy already? Now we are going to set up a new division of the government whose sole purpose is to supervise single parents, who already have enough to take care of on their own. Horrible idea. Story 10. I guess here's my problem with that. Say I get $200 in child support and $1,800 from my job. I spend $500 on stuff for my kid, but I also spend $200 on a giant box of personal items for myself. I can just see cranky exes wasting time in court about spending child support money on personal items. Story 11. People who think this is a good idea have never worked with parents and separated children. I worked for Child Protective Services for 3 years, and people will come up with any reason to discredit people with their child. Kid has a bruise? Abuse. Kid has a braid now? Why didn't they ask me? Kid says he had a bad day at school? Must be being psychologically tormented. Parents will dispute the brand of cereal they buy, the cost of their haircuts, and how much these kids actually need the things that are bought for them. Did they need a toy over new jeans? Must be neglecting them. Childcare courts are clogged as it is, and we don't need vindictive mothers or fathers going over line by line every expenditure and arguing what are or are not good expenditures for their children. Story 12. The comments about saving receipts, keeping track of expenses, and so on sound like a lot of work to add to a single parent's list of responsibilities. It may not seem like it, but taking kids to and from various after-school programs, daycare, and school, and then working over 40 hours a week, all while managing the household alone, is a lot to handle without the added responsibilities some people are suggesting. I understand that seeing things itemized or tracked would make the parent paying child support feel more at ease about where the money is going. The easiest way to see that your child is being taken care of appropriately is to just talk to your child during visitation and take part in your child's life as well. Most single parents aren't spending all their money on themselves. The majority of middle-class single parents spend all the child support on their child's necessities, and then spend a large portion of their own income on their child's wants and needs as well, while making significant sacrifices to their own lifestyle. Story 13. I would feel as strongly as I would about welfare recipients supplying the courts with evidence of how their welfare money is spent. The courts are busy enough as it is, and we don't need the government babysitting us any further. If an individual is granted child support, how they choose to spend that money is entirely up to them. The courts should only get involved if there is actual evidence of misuse or if the child is suffering or being neglected. Story 14. Annoyed. The most recently released census data shows that about 3/4, 74.1%, of custodial parents who were due child support in 2013 received either full or partial payments, and less than half, 45.6%, received full payments. This means that 25% of parents due child support do not receive payments at all, and an additional 25% did not receive the full payments that were due. That should be addressed first. Story 15. I truly hate this question. My ex had a job until child support was to be paid, and he quit 7 years ago so he could claim poverty and have his support amount lowered. He then proceeded to have 4 more children, and still neither he nor his girlfriend work. He doesn't pay the support until I take him to court, where I pay for a lawyer and he gets a county-paid public defender, and he avoids jail time by paying a small lump sum. I don't need his money, and I have worked 2 jobs to support my child this whole time, so I'll be damned to have to prove how I spend it. Story 16. I think the law would be redundant. Every child has needs that must be met or risk Child Protective Services involvement. Beyond needs are wants, and trying to codify what wants are necessary is a very complex problem. Every culture and community will be different on this, and it would be impossible to create a universal standard. Thus, I don't see the point of this other than to give anti-government types something to scream government overreach at. Story 17. Isn't the point of child support to raise the overall condition of the primary household? If they are doing illegal things with the money or are negligent with the child, that's an issue that needs to be brought forward to the courts. If not, how they spend it is on them. I hate giving 1/5 of my money to someone that takes care of my kid roughly 5% more than I do, but I understand the logic. The money is not the kid's and does not go to them. It goes to the person who has primary or full custody. Story 18. Child support worker here, and this is just insanely unrealistic. First of all, supply the court with proof of how the child support money is spent. Yeah, how do you imagine that works? Monthly hearings? That's thousands of taxpayer dollars spent on judges, clerks, county attorney, child support services unit to just be present. Once we are in this prove your expenses hearing, how does the custodial parent then do so? Here in Colorado, child support money can be loaded onto a specific card, so I guess that can be tracked, but who deems what are appropriate expenditures and what are not? We field this question daily from non-custodial parents. Our answer is simple and pretty logical, in my opinion. If the custodial parent has a roof over the child's head, clothes on their back, and food in their belly, then the money is being spent correctly. If the custodial parent has enough left over to treat themselves, then good for them. They're raising your kid and certainly deserve to have some personal pleasures in their life too. Edit. Spelling is hard, and sorry if it sounds bitter. I get this question literally daily, and it drives me insane, clearly. Story 19. No. Most of the single parents I know are just barely coping, juggling kids, housework, often study, and everything else. Someone thinks it is a good idea to add to the burden and make a stressful, hard job more so? Story 20. I would be against it. It's like the idea of welfare queens, which are much more of a myth than they're made out to be, or testing welfare recipients for drug use, which only found that only 2% of applicants tested positive. Some people have this idea that there are a lot of women out there neglecting their kids and spending all the money on drugs or something. And I'm sure it does happen a bit, but not to the extent that you may think. A requirement like this would just impose a burdensome new requirement on all of the hardworking single parents out there who are just barely scraping by. Story 21. As a child whose mother received 0 payments from 3 months to 18 years, perhaps we should enforce just paying it in the first place. My father is still a free man and royal piece of shit tax dodger. Story 22. It would be impossible to prove. For example, let us say Rob is the custodial parent of his 2 kids, and his ex-wife Karen pays $700 a month in child support. Rob gets paid on the 1st of the month and receives child support on the 28th. The day he receives child support, he buys a $150 pair of boots, a $60 pair of pants, and motorcycle parts for $300. Karen is upset that most of her money has gone to Rob's hobbies. Rob produces receipts that show he spent $400 on groceries, $150 on summer clothes for the girls, and $500 on daycare. It came out of his paycheck rather than her child support. He argues that, in fact, he did the right thing as a father by providing for them earlier in the month and treating himself later. The vast majority of wasting my child support cases are like that. There are already laws against parental neglect and failure to provide material support. If children are being neglected, do not hesitate to call Child Protective Services or your country's equivalent. Story 23. I am happily married, as you can be, and my husband and I are raising 2 daughters. We both work full-time and have a shared account. I'm sure he has no idea that the majority of the money I spend is on them. In our arguments about money, he has said that I spend more money and write checks more. Yes, I do spend more because I'm buying for myself and 2 kids, and he just buys items for himself. If we were to divorce, I know he would be shocked at how much he would have to spend on them, or how much child support he would have to pay. I think for the non-custodial parent, it is eye-opening how much kids cost. Story 24. How much are you willing to hurt the majority of people that use child support correctly in order to catch those who use it incorrectly? How much of a burden should legitimate people suffer so that you feel like the wrongdoers get caught? Story 25. It would just open it up to criticisms based on nothing more than opinion. You took her to the zoo. What a frivolous, wasteful expense. Why are you buying non-gluten-free bread? Why aren't you buying higher quality clothes? Why aren't you buying cheaper clothes? Story 26. It sounds good in theory, but even if everyone could agree on what expenses should be allowed, and that would be very hard to agree to, there would need to be a way to monitor and regulate it, which wouldn't be cheap, so someone would have to pay for it.